Welcome to Generations, a show which helps people 50 and better lead happy, healthy, and productive lives. Hosted by Nadia Giordana. Here's Nadia.
Hello and welcome to Generations, the Roundtable Edition. I'm Nadia Giordana, and co-hosting with me today, Karen Riesett. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Nadia.
And Elly Freed. Welcome, Elly.
Thank you.
And our topic of discussion today is how to plan for a rewarding retirement. We have two interesting experts with us today, Janet Warwick. And Janet, you're with the Metro Area Agency on Aging.
Yes, that's right. Thank you for your welcome.
Welcome. And Jackye Whitner. Jackye is a very active volunteer in a number of senior activities. Welcome, Jackye.
Thank you much.
Let's start by talking about what you two do, each of you, your agency, and your activities with regard to seniors.
Okay. I was asked to come and say a little bit about the Metro Area Agency on Aging. I shouldn't give too much away, but I have been volunteering with the Senior LinkAge Line, the Metro Area Agency on Aging, for nearly 10 years now. I got a start when I was pretty young. And what the Metro Area Agency does, among other things, is provide health insurance counseling for people who are going to be going on to Medicare or assisting people who are on Medicare with challenges that they're facing relative to Medicare. So we do a lot of things relative to that, and also we do a lot of assistance for people who are seeking services, for example, when through the aging process there are changes that occur in their lives and they need to have additional resources made available to them. So people can check in with us and we'll try to help them identify where those resources might be for them.
Oh, very great. And Jackye,
Yes.
tell us a little bit about your activities.
Well, I do a lot of volunteer work. I have lots of grandchildren, so I include them as part of my volunteer work. I come from a community where you reach a certain age and you're supposed to give back to that community where you come from. So I basically have been volunteering for a very, very long time before I even thought about retiring. And now I work with the Winter Carnival, St. Paul Festival and Heritage. I work with the Senior Roundtable Alumni. I work with the current court. I'm part of the ambassadors. I'm a veteran, so I do veteran services in White Bear Lake. I volunteered a couple of food shelves in Stillwater, and I schedule time for me as my personal time retirement. I am the CEO of my life.
What are some of the traps, if you guys have an opinion, what are some of the traps that seniors can fall into that they should be watching out for as they plan for their retirements?
Well, I think you have to look at your family and make sure that your family understands that you are not the 100% caregiver of those many grandchildren that you might have.
Good
And you have to learn how to say, no, I'm busy today. I'm going on a trip next week. Find somebody else. That's one of the pitfalls that grandparents let themselves get into.
Yeah, because they're perceived as they don't work anymore, so therefore they're completely at the beck and call of
Yes.
family.
Like,
They have
what do
nothing
you
to
do?
do.
Where are you going? And I don't have to answer to you. I'm my own CEO. Excuse me? So that's one of the pitfalls.
Any other suggestions?
Well, I think something that people don't think about very often is that as we're going through our more active work life and so on, whatever people are doing in their younger ages, I think they fail to try to identify what they want to be like in the later period of their lives. For a lot of people, and this occurred to me during the time that I was working, if people's only identity is wrapped up in their careers, they're going to have some really serious issues when it comes to adjusting to a time when they no longer have that job as their source of identity.
Self-esteem and being at their wits' end.
Exactly. Or not having other interests or activities that they can be involved in when everything has been tied to that other identity.
I think also often you're so involved in your work, your time is taken up. And when you retire, all that time is clear. So you need to have a purpose for that time and plan for what you're going to do. So that one of the things that I researched had a little thing about you should picture a calendar with for a year with nothing on it, and then multiply that by 20.
Oh.
And you know, figure out how you want to fill that before it happens, before you come to retirement.
I guess that's part of the planning then, is planning for some of the fun things and the things you've always wanted to do, that now's the time to get out there and do some of those
Right.
things.
Right?
We were also talking earlier about the fact that there's a honeymoon period where you retire and you think, oh, this is wonderful. I'm going to travel and I'm going to do the things I've got on my, bucket list right away. And I'm just so happy to have the time to do that. Well, that kind of winds down that euphoria, I think. And then you have to say, well, what am I going to do when I get tired of walking the dog? And when, and so then you have to realize that you really are in a transition.
Yeah.
And the transition has many aspects to it, but there are changes in your role, there are changes in your responsibilities, and changes in the assumptions you've had. So there's a lot of change going on.
And if you're married, it's a good thing to consult with your spouse before you retire, because you've been working separate jobs and having separate kind of lives during the day. It's not 24/7 togetherness like it is after you retire. So it's important to set goals, figure out what each person is interested in, what they'd like to do together, and what they'd like to do on their own.
I agree with that, especially with the spouse retiring at a somewhat similar time. My husband and I both retired, actually semi-retired, but it's still a lot of time at home within 2 years apart. And it was an adjustment period to be there together all day long. And it was a surprise. I didn't expect that.
Same here.
You had the same experience.
I did.
I think another pitfall is that you're Asian and you don't realize that you're Asian. You just do it because it comes naturally. And you need to ask yourself, if I retire, what's my life going to be like? Am I going to be able to do what I'm doing now, be able to afford to do what I'm doing now when I retire? And if you can't, at that moment, that's your wake-up call that you need to do something a little bit different to make sure that when you do retire, that you can do some of the things that you envision doing and don't have to really, you're able to do it yourself. You plan for retirement. You put away a little nest egg for you so that you can enjoy life. There's nothing worse than being at home all day with nowhere to go and no money to go there.
And no money to do those things that you want to do.
Yeah.
Which reminds me, I'm semi-retired, I still work part-time, but part of that is also to supplement that income and have extra money to do some of the extra things that I want to do. And I think a lot of people need to think about what are some of the things that they can do and without working a 40-hour work week, and maybe with flexible schedules, so that they can both bring in some extra money to supplement that income and have fun doing it.
On doing it. Or have the kind of career that you can look at either downsizing, the weeks or days. In my case, my career put me at a testing assessment. So I still do testing at the University of Minnesota. I do testing in the Twin Cities of the local tests that people still have to take, and it's only scheduled way in advance, so I know when I'm going to be there and I know when I'm not. So it's kind of it's a supplement, but it's a managed.
That's nice.
Supplement.
Managed is a good word, because you can work around that, you know when that, and you're probably enjoying it more than you ever did.
I love it. I'm working with a lot of college-age people who are in career changes, so I enjoy it, and when I walk away from that, I don't think about it again until maybe 2 months later when I'm scheduled to do it again. It's not a Get up, think about it, and do it
Yeah,
every day.
Exactly.
You know, I found an interesting little book, A 10-Minute Guide to Retirement for Women.
Ooh,
And I think that these retirement issues that we're talking about are particularly important for women to pay attention to, because there are some statistics that make it maybe more challenging for women in retirement, especially when it comes to the finance side of it. And they're saying that women earn less than men, 72 cents for every dollar a man earns. Women are more likely to work for smaller firms that don't have a pension plan, that the reduced salaries mean smaller Social Security. The average woman retiring today is 65, expected to live another 20 years, and life expectancies are even growing beyond that. And women live on the average 7 years longer than men, and so they need additional funds. Many women take time off from work to raise a family or care for an aging relative, so that cuts back on their retirement contributions. And then women tend to invest their money more conservatively and are not as good at being risk takers. So generally, they may not lose or have that risk of losing as much money, but they also may not gain as much money in their investments, which is kind of interesting.
that looks like a very good book. It's a 10-minute
It does.
guide
Yep,
to retirement for
for
women.
women, right. It's kind of fun.
I think that could be a required reading.
Yeah, another thing I think that is people, if you're tied into your job and that is your life, you don't know a lot of resources that are out there. So if you're thinking about retiring, you need to do a little searching to find out what's out there and what you can do. I like plays, so, but to volunteer at a theater would be an ideal way of you get to see plays and you get to see them for free. There's all kinds of resources out there where you can go to look at something and you can do volunteerism. Is searching to find the things that you're interested in that will cost you either next to nothing or will be very minimal, and that you enjoy. And there's tons of resources out there. You just can't sit and wait for somebody to bring you something. You have to go look for it.
That's an excellent idea.
It is.
So
Do you have a list?
I do. I have that and a bucket list, and I got all kinds of lists.
I mean, of resources.
I do. I do have some resources. I was fortunate enough to work for St. Paul Public Schools, so retiring from there is a lot of resources that you just get. And when it comes across my desk, I would copy it, throw it in a file, and one day I decided to go through the file and kind of categorize this, and I was like, okay, I can do some of these, and I'm going to start looking at them. So that's how I did it, yep. Do.
Well, I'd like to tag on to your comments about the financial aspects of retirement. A lot of it has to do with how we set ourselves up during the time that we're working. And so making sure that you've done as much as you can to maximize your planning for the future is really important, because that's going to give you more options when you've decided that you don't want to be in the workplace any longer. The other thing that I think, if we're going to be effective volunteers, is we need to do as much as we can before we reach retirement, take good care of ourselves so that our health is as good as it can be, so that we're also ready to take on the challenges, because certainly as we age, our health is probably not going to improve. So the better the place is where we start from,
Preserving.
the better it is going to be for the future.
Well, Janet, what should one look for in a financial planner? Is there just a general guideline of what to be looking for in a financial planner? It might be different, I assume, if you're starting at age 30 than if you're 50 and starting to plan for retirement, which happens.
If you do see a financial planner, it should be someone upon whom you can rely. So that means talking with an individual and making sure that what your goals are for retirement are consistent with the plan that they have for you. If you're fortunate enough to be employed by a company that has a pension plan or access to other services that might be available, that would be a useful way to help out too. It may be through an employer that you find some useful information.
And that
about
reminds me,
retirement.
Janet, you are involved with Medicare also. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yes, I'd be more than happy to. I just have to be really careful. I get way overwrought about Medicare because I have so much to say. Medicare is the first national financial plan or national health plan that was established. It was established during the Great Society, begun under Lyndon Johnson, and it went into effect in 1966. And I like to think back to 1966, which I can.
Me too.
The medical landscape in 1966, when you think of what kinds of health care there was available, what life expectancies were at that time, how many medications there were, and all of those things. It's a much different picture now than it was then. So Medicare, even at the time that it originated, was never designed to fill your complete medical needs. It was really intended to be more of a catastrophic plan. It was never designed to completely cover people's medical costs, and it still does not.
Yeah, there are other programs that go along with it, aren't there?
That's right. Medicare A, people typically pay for during the time that they're working, and if they've worked enough, they won't have to pay anything for Medicare A. But there are gaps in coverage where Medicare A does not cover everything. Medicare B is your physician services. There's a premium for that, higher if you have a higher income. And again, there are gaps in coverage, a premium, and a deductible annually. So even though Medicare's coverage is good, there still are a lot of costs. And depending on your health care needs, you may need to get a supplement to fill in the gaps that Medicare doesn't cover.
And are there some drug plans, or are they independent?
The drug plan is the newest part of Medicare, Medicare Part D, dog, I always say, the alphabet soup of Medicare. And you can either get your Part D plan independent of a Medicare supplement, or you can get it as part of a package that will supplement your Medicare. But then again, that's going to be an additional expense that you would have to pay. But I will say, because I want to get this word out there, if people meet certain income and asset guidelines, there is additional help for people to either pay for the Part B premium or paying for some of those expenses that Medicare does not fully cover, and also for drug plans. So the important thing is, if you are having difficulty paying for your Medicare or the supplemental pieces of the program that you need, it's always a good idea to ask. You can even give us a call or consult this booklet, and we're happy to let people know if there is assistance that might be available for them. So our organization, the Metro Area Agency on Aging, is a very good resource for all things Medicare.
Oh, thank you, Janet.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Janet. That was really good. Yeah, it makes me think about our health as we're at retirement age and some of the things we should do to maintain that health. And if you think about a person who may have been working a 40-hour work week and not having as much time to leap into, let's say, an exercise program. We all make these promises that we're going to go out and walking and jogging every single day. I myself bought a treadmill, and I promised myself, and I am actually doing it, but let's see how long it lasts. I hope I will stick with it. But is there a point where we have to I think about this, we have to be careful not to overdo. Those muscles don't take to hard exercise like they did when we were 20.
Well, and it's exercising your mental
Another point.
muscles also.
Another point.
And I think everyone, as they get older and in retirement, you start noticing little changes in what you remember, for example.
Yeah.
And so you have to be prepared to maybe do a little bit of exercise in terms of the muscle of your brain.
Absolutely.
And working on, getting into, there's so many free programs that you can go to on the subject of retirement, for example. And I have always found that when I'm in a transition or making a change in my life, learning more about where I'm at and what's going on with this whole new phenomenon that I'm going to be experiencing is what it gets me going in the morning then. And so I've taken many classes, and I joined the University of Minnesota Vital Aging Network program and became an advocate for vital aging. And, I did that because it was stimulating. It was fascinating. I was learning so much, and I was learning so much that was relevant to me, So there is a lot of information out there. And one of the other resources that I found that I've enjoyed reading is the AARP book called Your Brain. And I found this, a friend told me about it, my yoga teacher, as a matter of fact, and it's their, compilation of so much information on the brain, which is now, sort of a hot topic for a lot of different efforts that are trying to address, the whole issue around advancing age and dementia and Alzheimer's and what is this all about and so on. And there's so many good ideas in here. Take charge. When you challenge the brain, you increase the number of brain cells and their connections. So there's a lot of good suggestions to be found in a book like this.
Yes.
And, a lot of these activities that we are encouraging, like taking classes, learning a foreign language, or, learning to play a musical instrument, those things all
Stimulating.
are stimulating to your brain as well.
Absolutely.
And one thing that I think is important is meeting new people and keeping up with old friendships. I have some friends from fourth grade that I still see regularly. Friendships are really important, and I've heard it said that they increase longevity to keep up with people and meet new people.
As seniors, we are forced to come out of our comfort zones because of the electronic era. You have to be able to manipulate a lot of devices that you did not grow up with.
That's actually good for the brain, but frustrating.
It's good for the brain. It's very frustrating, but if you get a new smartphone and your son takes the old one away so that you can't use it, you are forced to learn how to at least do a few things, and you go like, oh, I didn't know this thing could do that.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this could
And it
happen.
grows.
And then the computer situation, you're forced, basically, in our age group, to come out of that old comfort zone. When I grew up, there was one electronic thing in my house, and that was a telephone, and it was attached to the wall.
Yeah, me
So
too.
now you have all of your cars speak to you, your phone talks to you. Sometimes it's kind of like too much stuff coming at you, but it does stimulate the brain.
It does. It helps keep the brain young. The brain and the body both have to stay young for us to have a rewarding retirement. They go hand in hand.
They do.
Right.
Nothing
They do.
worse than going downstairs to get something and getting to the bottom of the step. And you look around, you figure, why did I come down here? You go back up the step and start all over again.
And
By
then
the time
it'll
you
come
get
to
back
you.
down, it'll come to you. And that's a part of aging, but if you involve yourself in either your grandchildren, and little people can really stimulate
They can.
seniors to the
They
point
get you to
sometimes
do
where you have to
things.
go to bed. But
Yeah.
they can keep you moving because they grew up in an era that we don't know anything about.
Yeah.
And they punch and click on things, and they have no fear
No
of new
fear.
gadgets.
Right.
So they can keep you stimulating, and most of us are on Facebook so that we can see what our grandchildren are doing hundreds of thousands of miles away, because you don't all live in the same community. So it's stimulating. We're forced out of our comfort zone, I think, more than we would like to admit.
Another area where there are a lot of classes available for seniors in particular. The St. Paul Library System has classes, and they're free. And they're so readily available at all the
Worthwhile.
branches. Really worthwhile.
The Park Boards has a lot of stimulating
Right.
programs for seniors that are free or next to nothing.
Classes are always great because you're learning.
One thing we do that's really fun is once a week we play Scrabble with my husband's brother and one of our sons. We just regularly do this, and it's gotten to be so much fun. And I'm often the big winner.
All right.
And it's a word game, so that is very
It
stimulating
is.
for the brain.
Yep.
I'd like to say something too about using the brain and volunteering. One of the reasons that I got involved with the Medicare counseling when I first did, which was right after I had stopped working, was that I knew that it was going to be an opportunity for me to learn more, and I knew that I was eventually going to be able to put it to work in my own personal interest. And so, since Medicare is constantly changing, this is a good way for me to stimulate my brain. So, a lot of times volunteering can offer you that opportunity. Things like working with kids in school, reading to kids in school, or doing training with the Minnesota Literacy Council, for example, are ways that we can also volunteer, do good things, and also help ourselves improve
Well, and
our
because it's a
skills.
new environment, when you're volunteering, you're in new circumstances, new people, using new equipment, and needing to develop certain new skills or learn new
Right.
skills. So it's great all the way around that way.
The good thing about volunteerism is sometimes it's when you work, that's not your passion, it's what you have to do. When you volunteer, if you choose something that's your passion, then you really get involved in it because it's a difference from what you were doing. And to volunteer, like I'm interested in animals, so you volunteer at the animal shelters, you volunteer at a lot of different places. There's all kinds of people and places and things to do that you can find your passion. And that's what I think volunteering should be. It should be finding your passion.
Absolutely. And on that note, we're running out of time. But thank you, everyone, for being on the show today. And thank you for coming and helping us with this discussion. And thank you for watching. We'll be back next time.